you know, I like that.
Hey, all right. Welcome to this week's What the Heck. We have Stogo Shuffle and Speed Racer.
Yeah, how's it going?
How are you?
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm okay. I'm still got a cough that I'm getting over, but other than that, I feel great. So, uh, thanks. How are y'all doing?
Some variety of that. I mean, we just had that storm blow through, right? And fortunately, we didn't really get much ice. So
Yeah, we had some part of that storm as well. We got pretty bad ice storm. Got woken up at like 3 a.m. to a huge branch like landing on my bedroom roof.
That's that's wild. Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
yesterday was pretty wild. It was super windy all day with that storm coming in. Really high gusts and a
mm,
lot of snow. But what's really interesting is usually the snow up here is pretty dry, so the types of ice we see are very different. Um, but this is one of the few times I've actually seen what's close to an ice storm where like ice forms. I think it was because it was so warm the week before. So when it blew in, it was still somewhat warm with this cold air, and the snow was freezing as it was hitting things where
having
the
that
moisture
warm
was.
base ruins everything.
Yeah, so there's a type of snow that haven't ever really seen up here called, I think it's called rime, I want to say. I don't
mm,
know the name of it because I don't see it very often, but it's interesting because it's the one you see these like images of like a sign, particularly in coastal places, that's got like these sideways icicles that look like they're growing off of it.
yeah,
Um, but this type of snow is really interesting to me because it's not the way the snow looks is the opposite of the wind blowing direction because the snow is actually freezing as it hits stuff, so it grows into the wind.
oh,
And we
weird.
had just like little versions of that like
that's
around here
neat.
and there. Anyway, sorry, get excited about that stuff. Um, and then we had like the because of that we had some like deathy ice on the ground as we were walking around. Um, yeah, how's Chad doing? Let's see. How y'all doing? We got Egon, DJ MJR, Schmooster, and Southpaw Shorts, aka Kyle.
Nice.
Maybe a few other folks. Let's start it off with an intro. Like, who are you? And what did I write? What's one satisfying trick you like to do with your modular? It can be a performance trick. It could be just like any old trick. We'll start with Stogos since you happen to be at the top right.
Yeah. I'm Stogo, nerd who likes to play with music stuff. The thing that I've been doing lately that's kind of fun is taking kind of different outputs from a filter, like high pass, low pass, band pass, and kind of routing it through different effects and kind of getting more out of a voice that way. That's been pretty fun, especially with like droney stuff. It's been my kind of new thing that I found that's kind of fun to play with.
So you're like parallel processing essentially all
Yeah,
this stuff, and
yeah,
then bringing those in as needed to EQ essentially.
yeah. So like I might put like the high pass through like a reverb or a delay, and then kind of bring it back in and kind of do it that way.
That's
It's fun.
cool. That's cool. Speed Racer, you're up.
Well, this is I feel privileged to be a return guest, right? So I don't know how to describe myself ever. I don't do this for a living. I do something else. So this is like a crazy hobby that I have, and I think I wrote on the sheet that my big trick right now is that I'm really good at exploding my rack into pieces and then not being able to get it back together again uh, for reasons, right? And it's in that state right now. Like I think, yeah, it's absolutely in that state. Huge gaps. Um, the latest thing I've done is picked up a Fumana, which is very exciting, but also the kind of thing that once it's there, you spend a lot of time noodling and not necessarily uh, being productive in a typical sense. You're just like, oh wow, I can do this. Oh, I can do this, and you don't seem to get anywhere with it, really. Not the places you thought you were going when you bought it, right? But
I
I'm psyched to have it. I love filter banks, as you might guess.
I get so distracted when I'm doing stuff like that. Like I get a new module and I'm like, I can use it like this and like this and like this, and here's how I'm going to use it first. Right? Like I know how I'm going to use it first. That going into it, like when I plugged in the subway, I was like, I'm going to use it for going between voices, and I have yet to use it for that because I got so distracted by a different use for it.
That's exactly it, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much all my patches. It's just me trying to figure out a module and like, oh, that sounds cool, and then just kind of building from that. Never actually kind of make a song from scratch. It's just like kind of playing and discovering and
Yep. No,
yeah.
that happened to me with that thing, the vector wave. I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn this thing. I am no farther into that module than when I started because something else happened on the way. And
There's so many little things you can do. Like I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I answered the question. I'm Hex 7, and trying to think like I think for me, like one of the most satisfying things is the sound of your oscillators going into tune, right? And so on a few of mine, I have the fine tune set so that it's exactly one octave, right?
right.
And right in the dead center is pretty much in tune with whatever everything else is around it, which means when I rotate it all the way to the right, I'm up a fifth, right? Um, Instantly. And I think that's a pretty satisfying thing. Sometimes I take it out just a little bit, but another time is just crank it up to that fifth. It just sounds so good when you slide right into there with
That's
the other.
actually a pretty good hack because I don't know if you remember a conversation from the other day, but I've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed too. Have you ever watched a Jason Lim like explaining one of his oscillators or a performance or whatever, where you can see his hands on things. He can touch the big knob on his oscillators and just go boop
Yep.
right to a spot, right? And I'm like, damn, I want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's one advantage of Cosmos stuff is it's all big knobs, and a lot of it is DIY. So you've sort of tuned it yourself to the way you like it. Yeah, I mean, there's some other. I mean, talking about like new stuff, like the Legion came in last week, and I haven't had time to fully like put it through its paces, but I was playing with the different outputs and obviously running those through Subway at some point.
Right.
But one of the cool things is how they've designed the interface. Like there's some things I would do differently, but one thing they did was if I the tuning knob is just an encoder and it tunes in semitones by default. You click in and then it goes to a fine tune, and I think that's a range of about an octave. I'm not really sure, but if you click and hold, it locks it, which is fantastic for people like me who are always like bumping oscillators.
Accidentally, yeah.
Like Castor and Pollux is one of my favorite oscillators, but it is also the oscillator of all of mine that goes out of tune the most, not because it's drifting, but because I'm like hitting it, like I'm touching the knobs, and they're really small tuning knobs. They don't have like larger knobs on there, so like just one little bump and it's like it can be pretty far out.
Yeah, the new Platts firmware has that new kind of locking feature, which is cool. But
Yes.
I've just
Yeah.
picked up a couple of the Electrosmith 3340s, and those don't have any kind of feature like that. But it's like they're really fun to kind of mess with and kind of be slightly out of tune with each other and things like that.
That's awesome. I mean, being out of tune is fine. And actually, like the XPO, one of the new stereo make noise oscillator, is one that would drive me crazy if I was trying to play it like I play a lot of my oscillators where I need them to be in tune. But if it's one where I'm just playing the oscillator, it looks pretty perfect for just like playing around, finding a nice sound, not worrying about like being in key with, in tune with other instruments and things like that. That looks like a really fun interface as well. We're talking about global warming. So climate change is real for all of you that watch this. If you don't feel that same, that's keep it to yourself. Just anyway.
This is not that show.
Yeah, we can talk about that stuff at a different. Egon's rack is in flux. Two complete different patches to test. Oh, I see. So you got it flat on its back, and you can just slide stuff around and get a feel for it. That's a smart way.
I've thought about doing that actually with this case because Leibniz stuff. I think I complained about it last time I was on your show. That when you have that big thing chained together, especially on that top row, it's a drag to take it out. If you want to modify that arrangement, I screwed myself, painted myself into a corner.
It's hard to put modules in and out when it's vertical, and if it's something that's a bigger fixed case like that's vertical and tilted towards you, I imagine there's lots of
some
missing knurlies in the carpet.
You get a hang for it, right? It's that magical thing that you do, right? Hold with one hand, get that one nut in, switch hands, pick up another one. All right, I got two corners done.
Yeah, I always get nervous though when people are streaming and they're like plugging and unplugging things and it's lifting modules out of the case. I'm like, oh, it's gonna short or something like that.
Yeah, I can't actually deal with that myself for that reason, right? Like it's just let's crank that down.
That's me. I'm like totally the one who does that.
you're everything's loose all the time.
No, I'm like, I want to plug it in on the stream, and to stream I have to have my system. Anyway,
didn't you shock yourself with a glitchy?
Twice.
Or no, not the glitchy. The numeric counter.
Yeah, I did. That was a good shock. But I was just thinking, based on DJ MJR just said, like, put cactus spikes on top of the caster and pollux, like tuning knobs. Like,
So
maybe I
every
need
time
to
you bump it, you're like, ah!
let's up the ante. Let's put like electrified knobs on there. So if I bump it, I get a little.
Yeah, like the those bumps that are on the what's that? What's the Schlappy filter that has the
Oh,
touch?
the 100 grit. Yeah.
Yeah, put those on replace your tuning knobs with those, so that every time you're just like,
I could just glue them, I guess. I don't know. That feels wrong.
Well, have you looked at the Terra yet? They were actually they released a video of the production version, and that's got rows of those things. They don't shock you, but
no. Egon's like, you're not using your 5-volt rail anyway, and you're very much right. That feels like a bad Cosmo idea waiting to happen. Some electrified knobs. Yeah, I guess, yeah. Is there anything that's hot that you want to talk about this week, like the Soma Terra or whatever?
those kinds of things just always get my attention, so I can always talk about them. You know what I mean? Having not put my hands on one, though, it's hard to talk about. I can only drool from a distance, but it sure looks like fun.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually okay. So Soma had Sonic State come in and like Nick Bat from Sonic State come in and like tour their factory. Look at the new Soma Terra and the Soma Pulsar Utilities or something like that. I forget the
Yeah, that
actual
was
name of
it.
the third
Pulsar
one.
Utilities.
And I actually care less about those two devices than the factory tour. I thought the factory tour was actually pretty cool to see how they built those devices and how they put together. And like they've comments like, oh, we've gotten QA for testing the Pulsar 23 down to 2 hours per unit. Like that's insane.
There's the Soma stuff is very bespoke, very, very bespoke.
Yeah.
And they put a lot of love in the build. They really do. But Terra's a strange one, right? That one's not going to work for everybody for a bunch of reasons, right?
It's like a commitment, right? It's like almost like a whole new instrument that you need to kind of learn.
I categorize myself as like a sound designer, I guess, if I was going to do anything. And so to me, it's got immediate appeal, right? Like, oh, I can just do things. I can be Brian Eno just automatically, right? That's not for everyone. It just isn't, right? So,
I mean, it seems cool. Like it feels to me like the perfect Burning Man synth, right? Like,
right.
It certainly looks like it.
Like that would be perfectly at home in a drum circle, right? Like
now,
you need some speakers and a power supply, but like no, it's like that type of instrument where you can just have a lot of fun by a campfire, like hanging out with some pals, or even just by yourself, like because you are playing it and it is very expressive.
Yeah. They didn't put speakers in it though. You know
no,
what I mean?
no.
So at least for that endeavor, you're going to have to.
Well, you need
Burning Man. There'll be a full PA anyway.
You need the Soma Terra expander, which is just like a stump that's a bunch of subwoofers, something.
Just kind of clicks in the top.
Yeah.
Stump with a bunch of subwoofers sounds like a teenage engineering product.
Teenage engineering gets so much hate, and
they deserve some of it.
I don't understand a lot of it. Like,
yeah, no, it's a weird art project. But my general view on these things across the board is, hey, great work if you can get it. Right? Like if people are buying those $1,600 tables, whew, good on you.
But you know what? Like, I think Kyle pointed it out to you. Like, that table is priced exactly in the middle of like what you would spend for like designery tables out there
Oh
in the
yeah, no,
market.
it's
Like
right in the middle. So people are buying them right now. You know what I mean? Someone has one. We
it's
probably
genuinely
know.
cool. If it was like $80, all of us would have ordered it already or something, right? Like
I prefer the idea that it's $1,600 and it's just large enough to hold the TX6, right?
yeah.
Like that's
Finally the
that.
perfect stand for it.
Yeah, it's a $1,600 stand for a $1,400 mixer, and it's all, you know, cigarette pack.
Like I feel like teenage engineering like gets a lot of hate because of the pricing and some of the things they make. But like, I think they're just a really passionate crew that want to make stuff that they like and hopefully other people like and will pay money for
I
it. Like,
own a lot of Apple products,
yeah,
and I actually sold them in 1984, and that's been the complaint about them from the beginning, right? Boy, that's pricey, and they're in a market where you can buy stuff for half the price, but they're still here, right? Like
yeah.
people want that differentiation of what they perceive to be the quality, whether it's there or not, right?
Econ. The SWN is a great single module for a drum circle all in one. That's a good point. Like, I feel like what that's a good topic. Like, what
Drum
handful of
circle
modules,
module.
like,
And
yeah,
yeah,
what's your like I don't know, what's your Terra that you could make out of some stuff you might already have? Like, I feel like the BIA and like a voltage block or like maybe just like the micro freak as a controller, like, and that's all you need, like to like get a wide range of sounds and play it.
That's a good
yeah.
question.
I don't have too many modules like that. Closest thing would probably be the A1116, which is like a mini synthesizer. It's got like a filter and everything
Yeah.
in it. It's pretty cool. It's kind of good for just like bass lines.
Yeah, same thing. Kind of thinking of all-in-one stuff. I have a Dusted Time that is really an all-in-one, right? So when in a pinch, or actually that thing which I always forget that I have, the Euroborough. That's a do anything module, right? So
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing that sets the Terra apart from like a lot of modular stuff is about automating things, right? Like
that's
automating
true.
CV
Lots of CV.
changes and modulation and stuff. So it feels like you have 27 hands instead of, two big stupid hands like mine, like that can barely do stuff. And so like if I was like, I don't have a lot of like immediate controllers outside of like the Hapax is controlling things via MIDI, right? But like
That's interesting.
I don't have anything in the modular where I'm like physically touching to trigger things, that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. Like there's a really good no computer sequencer that's like a giant panel. It's an 8-step or maybe a 16-step sequencer depending on the setting. Like it's just the usual, one knob per step kind of a thing. Um, but he had touch plates at the beginning of each one, so you can use it like a trigger sequencer, or you can jump around the sequence and things like that. Like I don't have much like that kind of stuff that's on the modular. I don't know what y'all have. Actually, I know you just got that Buchla controller, so you could do some fun stuff with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, that thing is really, really fun, and super flexible, right? So it's kind of a world your oyster controller. And where is it? It's nowhere in sight. There it is.
Yeah, I mean that's just something to think about. Like one of the projects I've been thinking about doing is making a MIDI controller out of a handful of like the Morse code keys,
Oh yeah,
the tapper dealios. Because I saw
I
like I could
like
get a
that
batch of
controller,
those.
man. I really like that expander. I don't have a pulsar, but
Oh yeah, I'm not even talking about the pulsar yet.
oh
I'm talking
no,
about a MIDI controller I'm
I
thinking of
missed out.
building. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh. Tell me more.
Just using those Morse code keys, like a Cosmo sized thing where I can play it, and I think that might be a fun way, along with maybe I don't know some other additional
How about an electric typewriter with a
things.
MIDI controller in it,
That'd be cool.
or even
That
an OG typewriter? Just
I have an
a,
OG
a clacky
typewriter, but
clack.
I was thinking about how tricky that might be, because it likes to jam up. Because
They
it's
do. The
yeah,
old ones do jam.
um, yeah, I don't know, but like if we're gonna loop back, I do want to talk about the pulsar expander with Bartok because I feel like that might be something appealing to him, but um, it does also have the little tappity taps like mini Morse code keys.
And he made
Um,
himself better alligator clips, didn't he?
Bartok,
Yeah,
yes, he made the world better alligator
like
clips. Like these are
burly ones.
awesome.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
made burly ones. I recall. Yeah, yeah, which is what the pulsar needs, right? Like,
Well, I mean, anything. I don't like cables that are ultra thin that sort of obey gravity more than others. I like it when
hmm.
they stick up off the panel because then it's easier to sort of like shoot your hand in to get to a control. At least that's my feeling on the matter. If you have a bunch of low profile right angle cables and stuff, you can make it really nice, but the alligator clips were not that.
Well, and
And
they sometimes you have a sketch connection. Sometimes one accidentally pops off. You know what I mean? If things are crowded, they just the shittier the alligator clip, the sort of the worse the duty is. Bartok's idea was the correct one
yeah,
there.
Egon saying, Egon, you need to just pop in and talk. I can send you an email. Anyway, saying he needs a very touch oriented rack because he makes such boring patches. Like, I don't know, such plain patches. Uh, I disagree with some of that, but I think having a lot of stuff to play with on the rack is like the magic. Like while the sequence is running, being able to like turn things off on, move the sound around, add some LFOs, like all of that's just a blast. I think that's the funnest part of modular. Beyond building your ideal mono synth 6 times or whatever your goal is. um,
Yeah, to me, it's a bit of a game. You remember that board game Mousetrap?
yeah,
It's like that. You're building it so that you can kick the boot and drop the ball into the bathtub and that whole thing. That bit's way more fun. And I think again, looping back to the beginning, right? It's why I get lost all the time, right? Because you're like, oh, I can connect this to that, and oh wow, look at what just happened, and it just immediately left turn.
Yeah, that's pretty much how my rack is. I don't have too many performance things other than twisting filter knobs and things like that. I've got the key step, but it doesn't do a whole lot because I'm still learning it, and I'm not really good at piano really. But it's all sequencing. Like I use the Turing machine, I think more than anything.
that's pretty
But
cool.
but I've been looking at maybe getting something like that now that I've got a bit more rack space, like the pressure points or something like that. That's a bit more kind of performative and something you can
Pressure
jam
points
with.
is neat. I have a zero coast sitting or a zero control as well,
Yeah,
and I love that thing.
Those are interesting to me. Like I've always wanted to play with them. The the performance controller that I'm the most interested in, or the type, is a joystick. Specifically, there's a couple out there that record the CV as you're doing it. So not only can you do
Hmm.
it live, but like if you get something you like, you can just like tap a button, record the thing in or whatever.
Well,
And
so let's talk about the voltage block and the joystick for a sec. So how do you,
yeah,
how do you how do you use the voltage block?
I'm really bad at using the voltage block. It's actually the module I'm gonna pop out temporarily while I play with the module you sent over.
Right on.
Probably tonight, actually.
Not the worst choice.
Uh, and it's not because I don't like it. I actually love the voltage block, and I think it's one of one of my favorite things. Uh, one of the things that I had misconstrued, even though I'd watched videos, I tend to watch videos while I'm doing other things and miss stuff, was that I assumed it was like one slider per step kind of a thing, but it's actually one slider per channel, and you're sort of like touching the step and adjusting the slider. So once I've dialed it in, it's really nice, and I actually really like the interface and how it works for its size. Um, but I also haven't used it a ton uh, yet. There's a few tracks where I have the evil eye there sequence in like a magic setting, and I basically want to like copy that onto the voltage block and save it for one of my sequences when I'm like traveling and stuff. But
Yeah.
mostly I
So
just like randomly dialing in voltages and like attenuating it a little bit.
speaking about them being out of your rack, um, no. So the way I was taught, and by that I mean, I was hanging out at Detroit Modular, and they always have one in the rack. And the way theirs works is it's just in time with everything else.
Yeah.
And whenever they want modulation, they'll just plug into one of the channels, pop into the thing they're going to wobble, and then just record a squiggle on this thing and let it go.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a super intentional one. You know what I mean? Like it differs from any LFO you're going to ever plug in that
Yeah.
way. Right.
That's
And
that's how the Volterra was. That's the Metron's little version of essentially the voltage block, right? Like it's a single knob that you're sort of like wiggling around to record a sequence or set a sequence.
yeah, so the
Um,
joysticks are intriguing to me for that same reason, right? That you can lay a thing in that's based on a human motion, right? And loop it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, there's that new module. I don't think it's come out yet. It's like the Gliss or something. It's like a sliding thing with an LED, and I think that might record CV or something like that.
I don't
That seems like
remember. That's the one that Schmooster was talking about a while ago, if I
Well,
remember
there's also the
correctly.
LS1. Those kind of that those were around for a while. I have one of those, but they seem to have vanished. But that was light based, like a wipe strip that recorded. That was pretty nifty deal too.
Yeah, that one's pretty cool. There's a bunch of really cool interactive controllers, which gets me thinking about oh shoot, what's that like super industrial dude who like I feel like he's a dentist or something, but like manufactures all his own like instrument like interfaces. Oh shoot, chat help me out here. This is like ultra industrial. He has like a big like heavy metal arm thing with like triggers on it
I
and
don't know
a
who this
big
is.
spinning wheel he has to keep moving kind of a thing. Hold on.
Got to Google it yourself.
Industrial makes own colors. I'm totally spacing his name. One man industrial doom. That is promising. Just tell me the name.
And you get Heavy
That's.
Metal Cat instead.
Can you just tell me the name of the guy? There's like a whole article. Author and Punisher. Anyway, look up that dude. There's like a few documentaries and stuff on there, and I think he's just making like fancy MIDI controllers. But I think the thing that's cool about them is he designs these instruments in a way that interact with the sound in a way that sort of like feels like it should interact with the sound. So like keeping this big, huge, like thick metal wheel spinning to keep a drone sound going or something, like it requires effort. Like you're physically moving, right? Like there's always a discussion about like, synthesize like the coolest synth players on stage, like it's still like not that cool compared to like people flinging around their guitars and like wailing on the drums, right? Like there's stands that move or like guitars, but like it doesn't
it's
always convey
turning
the
a knob
weight.
really hard.
You
Right.
know what this made me
Turning a
think
knob
of?
really hard versus like this guy's like for the kick drum, he has this big heavy sliding metal thing. So whenever it hits the end, that's when the kick hits. So he has to like
That's
physically
crazy.
keep this thing moving.
Yeah, that's
Um,
cool.
He's
like
like a
I
Kodo drummer, but
And I guess my
Just
point is like
super physical music.
like these interactive controllers, these controllers for modular are sort of like in that realm. Like there's other stuff that probably do what they do much easier and precise, but like these let you interact in a fun way that like gives anyone who's watching some idea of what you're doing, unless it's like a really subtle change, maybe. I don't know.
Actually, speaking of weird gadgets like that, I really want a nano garden. I've wanted one for a while, and they come and go, but talk about a strange instrument that does strange things, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember seeing that. That's a cool. It's got these little antennas.
Yeah.
Folk tech.
It's made out of like guitar strings or something, I think, and so you can
Yeah.
just zing them.
But I
I
mean,
kind of like
like,
the Micro Freak, the capacitive keyboard's
I,
pretty
I I love
expressive
the
as well.
microfreak. The microfreak is really a nifty device, and also just one of the bargains of the century.
I love that
Yeah, for
keyboard
sure.
so much that even though I think the Mini Freak is a fantastic synth, it's got a worse keyboard.
It's
Like,
it's possible that the micro is better, in my opinion. It's
I mean, I just
my
like the way it interacts. Like, it feels like an instrument that like you can really like have some subtlety to, and like it lives
I don't want
based
to
on your
say I've
best.
had it with keyboards, but something. I mean, that's why I bought this, right? Like, you want something a little different these days. At least I do.
Yeah.
Done the keyboard thing. Something way more expressive is interesting. That's why the Osmos is fascinating, right? Because
There's
it's 100 different versions of expression.
right. Like there's so many cool, interesting instruments that like the Osmos, the Micro Freak, those are like they've not only designed an interesting interface, some of which have been sort of done before. I think Osmos has that sort of like flexi ribbon sort of thing, right? Am I remembering correctly on that one?
I don't know how they're doing it.
Or is that the Egan Matrix one? Are those the same? No, the Osmos is different. The Egan Matrix is the one I'm thinking about that
Yeah, the
has the like
Osmos
sort of
has
stretchy.
keys that you can wobble basically, and that adds
Yeah,
to
yeah, I remember that. That one's
one
pretty cool.
additional layer of expression to aftertouch and whatnot.
And also, I played like before I got into all of this, I played a lot with like iPad software
Mm.
and computer software, and I didn't like the computer side, but the iPad stuff was pretty fun for me because it meant I didn't have to see work stuff. Um, but what blew my mind, like I played with all these synths, and I got a good grasp of synthesis as well on all of these
There are
just
some great synths for the iPad.
insanely cool ones.
There
But
really are.
but then Moog of all companies, like Moog doesn't really do digital the best. Like they do digital stuff okay on their hardware since there's always little quirks here and there. Um, but they came out with the Animoog,
Animogs.
which I think is the perfect. It's the best anyone has done at creating a synthesizer for a like a touch
For a
piece
touch
of glass,
device.
right? Like
Yeah. Yep.
it's incredible. It's very responsive. Um,
Yep.
Oh, so the Osmos does use the Egan matrix, but I'm thinking of like what
Okay.
was the other one they made before that? That was like
Yeah, I don't know enough
unattained
about those to
Egan
be an authority.
matrix. I know the sound engine. I want to know products. The Continuum is what I'm thinking about. It's just it sort of looks like a you know what I'll share. I can do this fancy share screen thing. Window. No Chrome tab. Continuum share. Yeah, so the Continuum. Are y'all seeing that? Yeah, cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I've seen Jordan Rudess play one of these.
Yeah, it's like it sort of looks like they're playing a trampoline, right? Like a stretchy sort of cloth thing. I have no idea what it's actually made out of. Other one that caught my eye is like just a really cool interface. It's definitely in the realm of the Osmos or the Roly keyboards where you got like all sorts of different parameters you can draw from. So yeah, anyway, pretty cool. Should we talk about modular stuff?
I think we kind of did.
Yeah,
We want
it's all mutually
expressive
adjacent.
devices
It's
for
all
our
related.
modular.
Yeah, like
Exactly.
and like we've got these cool pieces of gear that are pretty easy to patch into. Even if you're not like great at DIY, you can like cut a cable in half, pull some wires apart, and tie them to a thing, and now you have a new. You can tie it to a piezo, or you can put like a button on it or some sort. Like you can make your own interface for things pretty quickly. Um,
Yeah, do you have any of those? Who makes them? I think Landscape makes them. The all flesh pads.
yeah, I've got them right here actually. They've been on the back burner, but I've got them
Nice.
ready to DIY. Um,
You just
I don't.
attach one to the other and you're done, basically.
Yeah,
I think that's a very simple one.
it's very simple. It's like you cut you pull the back off of the jack, cut the ends to be about the same size, bend them, and solder them onto a plate. Very basic. Um, yeah. I haven't tried them though, so I can't say how good they are or how conductive I am yet.
That's always an issue. Actually, going back to touch interfaces, do either of you have that issue where like you have to wet your fingers or whatever? Because I find that's a problem for me all the time. I had to adjust my zero control, and the only one that's ever behaved right out of the box is this Buchla. But everything else, sometimes I'll touch and nothing happens.
Kind of.
Right.
I mean, I live in a really dry state.
Dry has a lot to do with it.
At a very high altitude, so there's not a lot of moisture up here. But I've had no problems with the Microfreak. It works very well. I thought I had issues with the Error Instruments Spanky, but it turns out I just didn't read the manual good enough, and it's really embarrassing when the creator points that out to you. You're like, oh, I was just using it wrong. Cool. So that one was very responsive. And then I also thought I was maybe like not that conductive when I was using the 100 grit, but it turns out that one's just not like, it doesn't quite mangle the sound as much as you would expect when you're making those shorts.
That's interesting.
Right.
It is a really good module though.
I don't think I've had any issues, although I don't have too many kind of touch controllers. I think the Microfix the only other thing. I've got the BeatStep Pro. I bought that secondhand, and it actually had an issue where it was like way too sensitive. Like I'd hover my finger over one, and then it would like show the value for the other because it's got those capacitive touch knobs that'll show you the value when you change it. So yeah, I've got the opposite problem.
Right.
I'm like too moist or something.
Well, the zero control was like that, where it would jitter between stations. So they have a procedure for adjusting it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a good question. Egon's asking, what's the craziest distortion module? I don't know how much either you two play with distortion, but that's something
I'm a huge fan of distortion. I'm a huge fan of distortion. And what do I have for distortion? I have a rabbit hole, which is really fun tube.
Tube-based sick distortion, great for just even a little fuzz.
Yeah, and I also have the what is it? The Versio Ruina, the noise engineering.
Yeah, the Ruina
Versio. Yeah, said it backwards. That one's fun. Has a button that says Doom, so irresistible, right? And then, it's weird. I had this 6-band filter bank, but I don't know where it went. That thing's a distortion module from hell.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff's really cool. I've got the I don't have too much in the way of like distortion, but the resonance on the SVF filter is like pretty gnarly.
Yeah,
and the wave folder on the carbon and the saturation for that.
Wave folding can fix you when you don't have a specific distortion module, you can still get your fix, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, let's talk about distortion. So if we're talking about getting rowdy and distortion like sounds, I haven't met many distortions that feel rowdier than just like a gnarly filter or some wave folding, right? Like a lot of the times we're already working with waves that like don't have a lot of there's not a lot of harmonics for that distortion to latch on to and
You
wreck.
can't really distort a pulse, right?
Right, exactly,
Mhm.
because it's
Yeah.
a lot of them are clipping based.
Yeah, you're already clipped.
Right.
Exactly.
But of the ones that I have, so I've tried a lot. Like the first one I ever built is the Rat module distortion, which is in the Cosmo case and probably needs lower levels than it's getting. But it was really anticlimactic for me because I had this MS-20 rip-in filter and I was like, into the distortion. And it was like kind of mellower actually after the Rat. So I was like, okay, new expectations. Let's figure it out. Like, I figured out how to work with it. They like, a resonant filter or more complex waveforms than a sine or a triangle or a square even. But there are some really good ones. The Ruina Versio is one that I tried because I was going through all of the Versios. I was in a phase where I was like, all right, let's try some reverb and see what people like about reverbs. Try the delays. And I was like, I don't need another distortion, but I'll try the distortion. And it's like a cool distortion though. It's like
It's a digital
thick.
distortion, right? So
It's thick.
it's unique to digital distortions. I think there's a huge difference between that and the rabbit hole, for instance.
I agree. And it's got a good sound. Like I think it's an awesome sound just because of the stereo and the way you can manipulate it.
I think
And
it's
even,
really tunable, right? Like
yeah,
you can really find a distortion you like with that, and whereas like a tube distortion, right, is always
yeah,
going to sound like a tube
yeah.
distortion for the most part.
And then uh, I tried the 100 grit because a few folks swear by it still, and I just couldn't find a like home for it. Like it sounded good, but it didn't sit well with anywhere in my mix. Like it wasn't great on bass, it wasn't great on leads, at
That's
least
interesting.
for what I liked. So
That can
that one,
happen, right? Like
yeah.
Joe with it every other way, but it doesn't mix
Like I think the whole concept of
timbre
it is
wise.
sick, right? Like it
Sure.
can be rowdy, but it got pulled. I just wasn't using it. And that one I recently traded for a God Eater, an Animal Factory God Eater.
Oh,
And
did you
they're
get that in yet?
yeah, and I've been playing with it. You heard it earlier.
Okay, I was going to ask. I
That's
thought that might be the. Did you get the Eurorack size, the Cosmo filter? I forget what that is. The 1144, 1114.
the Gur filter.
Yeah, I thought that might be what that was.
Mm,
So that was the God Eater. That was
mm. I do have two Gur filters, but they're not currently in any signal chain. And anyway, looping back to the question, like, what's the rowdiest one I've used? Like, probably Trashmaster gives you that like electro rowdiness distortion, like just sounds good, whatever you put through it. Or
Can we check back after you play with the Zlob?
yeah, I just haven't played with it yet. So like this is from my experience. But the one that like is top tier by far, and Kyle sort of mentioned it earlier, was the Erica Plasma Drive. Like I don't have the Plasma Drive, I have the pedal
Thing makes some
version.
unique sounds for sure.
Yeah, let me grab it real quick. Don't electrocute me, please. Yeah, I don't have the Plasma Drive, but I do have this because I did try the Plasma Drive. I forget whose, but it's anything you put through the Plasma Drive sounds great. This is essentially the Plasma Drive pedal version, but collaborated with Jack White. It has some extra bonus stuff. So, it's got an on and off switch. And then it's got this effect switch over here. Actually, one of these is momentary, and one, I believe this one can be latched on or off or momentary, which I really like. But this one's essentially adding harmonics and extra distortion. And this one gets rowdy, like really fun stuff. And I've been I've been doing some stuff where I'm like taking a lead voice uh, out of the Euro rack going into an octave pedal and then into this, and it just is like one of my favorite sounds that you'll just keep hearing because I like it. I think that's probably the rowdiest. And then the Bastel Dark Matter, as also Kyle said, like that one's uh, intense. I don't know how to describe it. Like it sort of can side chain itself in a very gnarly way. Yeah, I don't know.
That's one I'd like to try, but have not.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say, just with regard to distortion too, is that there's a bunch of like the mutable instrument stuff can soft clip.
Yeah.
There is a bunch of stuff that does that as sort of a feature. I think DivKid Stereo Strip has some of that in it too, right? And some soft clipping can be, I think, is a nice like warming distortion. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go at it. I think if you're going for the rowdiest sound, you probably like traditional distortions and pedals and stuff aren't likely going to get you where you want to be. I think wave folding and rowdy filters is the way to go. Like you said, the wave folding on a few WMD modules just
Yeah,
just goes a little nuts.
yeah.
well, so the thing I was going to say about filtering, why I think, uh, to me, especially, I don't know, synth sounds, they can live and breathe if you do them right, right? Like, and a lot of times distortion on top of that is too much, right? Like, um, it's already got enough of that going. What you said earlier about how so many sounds just don't. There's nothing left to distort, really, right? And
Yeah.
so that's why a filter actually works better, right? Because you're building that living, breathing sound. Uh, it's
You
already
could,
funky
yeah,
enough, right? Like you don't need
Yeah.
more icing on the cake. But sometimes, you just have to wang it.
yeah. The wave folder on the Carbon kind of makes me want to get into wave folding a bit more because it's just like an on-off button. It's either kind of everything or nothing. It'd be cool to kind of
Hmm.
modulate that a
They
bit
put
more.
that on the Orion too for some reason, and it's like just as gnarly on the Orion.
So, do either of you have the steady state gate that came out
No, I don't
recently? That
have. Yeah.
that has folding as an option, and that can make some really neat sounds.
That one is the most tempting of all of the uh, natural gates, I guess.
It's
Not
also
natural
really
gates, like
inexpensive, like because that actually, speaking of gates, Tip Top just announced uh, sort of the price and whatnot for the 292, right, which is the last piece of the Buchla puzzle for now, and that's going to be 350 for 4 channels of low pass gates, right? I think the steady
yeah,
state one comes in
LPG.
at
Yeah.
like 200, 220 or something like that. So it's a good deal, and of course the one that everybody wants, you can't have it anyway, but it's $400, right?
I don't know.
So
Maybe like I think there's a lot of good like LPGs, like regular LPGs are okay. Like they're okay modules, and I never got too into them. I've built some, and they're all right. Um, but I like all of these faux LPGs that are coming out, right? That mimic a lot of it. So
oh, the
like,
ones that aren't Vactral.
right. So like the
Yeah,
natural gate, the steady state gate, and like the Pittsburgh modular.
I agree with you on
Is it the
that.
Bats one? I think it's the Bats
Is
one,
I yeah
or maybe it's the Wolf.
I
I don't
that
know. It's the
sounds
one
right.
that Egon has, but it's awesome because it's using an MS-20 filter, essentially as a filter in there. It's like a pretty cool module. Um, that was the most tempting of those three to me.
No, I have also the Make Noise Dynamics, which was they didn't make many of those, but that's like the curve section out of the Zero Coast, right, with that dynamic feature, uh, and it's not a low pass gate, but it makes weird sounds like one, right? It's another faux.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I mean, all of these get me thinking about a few things. Like the natural gate, that's the one that's the most that was like unobtainium and probably still is for a lot of folks.
Yep,
Where
the
it
covet module, right?
right, like not only is it cool looking and rare and expensive, but also like it has a cool feature where it's sensitive to I think the it's like, velocity isn't the right word. Maybe it's the it has some sensitivity to velocity. I don't remember if it's the audio level or what it is, but it changes how open it gets based on some sort of velocity aspect to it. Um, and one of the things that I think Pittsburgh has been like doing a lot of magic with is um, changing how instruments sound based on what you put into them, which sounds really simple, but like the llama kick drum, which I thought was just like beautiful panel and like kind of mediocre kick sound. Like if you're comparing it to like an ultra kick or a crater or something, like yeah, okay, it's not like gonna have that kind of same hit, but it's cool in that like if you whack it a few times in a row, it actually changes. Like it gets wilder the more
Oh,
you
that's
hit it.
cool.
Like
Right.
it's resonating. Um, cool stuff like that. Like I think they've been playing a lot with this stuff because they're building towards something pretty cool. So yeah, that was the Bat LPG. Um, that is the most tempting, one of the most tempting modules to me as far as LPGs go. Um, I'm a sucker for MS-20 filters. Um, and also their panel
Who
design is
isn't? Who who isn't really?
I will say the rowdiest filter is still to me like the crow. Like that thing, filter of crows is uh, upsettingly rowdy sometimes when you flick that instability switch. But yeah, that one's not going anywhere.
Well, I mean, how to say? I don't have one of those, but if I did, and I flipped a switch that said instability and it wasn't, I'd be upset. You know what I mean? Like it's the Doom. It's like the Doom button on the Ruin
It's
Versio, right? Like when
yeah,
you push it, you want some Doom.
it's not subtle. Like
Perfect.
that's the thing that got me about like my first hit with distortion, right? Like with that the rat module, which is a great distortion pedal by the way. But like I went from like rowdy to like a little bit less different style of rowdy. Like it wasn't like the impact I was hoping for when I flipped the switch and it got really red and angry. Versus like the instability switch, it's like okay, that's a lot of resonance. Okay,
That sounds like a feature, not a bug.
oh yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm saying that over the I've tried the MS-22, which is another fantastic filter with, in my opinion, not the greatest panel design. Just because the top knob, which is the most important knob, you can't get to that easily.
Whoops.
Um, but the Crow is rowdier
I
than
think you're going to freak out on that filter bank.
I'm really looking forward to it. Um, I think it's going to be a lot like the it's going to be similar to the dark matter in that it's going to be something where I like accidentally go into like full honking doom distortion, like
Yeah, it actually
the wrong
is like
slide.
that. It's just like
Yeah,
boom, like it
yeah,
just
yeah,
flips over into complete feedback.
yeah,
It's it's a crazy module, and that's kind of what makes it funny, right? Like is the instability is the feature,
yeah.
right?
Kyle's asking if Tip Top mentioned the EU Vactrol issue. I'm not super clued in, but Kyle, is that? Um, I know Vactrols have been sort of a no-no for a while
It
and hard to get
cadmium, I heard.
right because they have cadmium in them, which is not
Yeah,
like great to be around for living
Well, I'm not eating
humans.
the Vactrol.
Right, but I assume the EU has got some protection or in place where they're, not cool anymore. I don't know. Um, so
Well, it's kind of like how to say it. Like here in the States, a really good example is lead-free solder, right?
yeah,
Like that's only required in California, right?
yeah,
Uh, the other 49 states don't care about that,
yeah.
right? So it's does it matter? I don't know. It matters in California, but it may not matter because the other 49 states don't care, right? Like somewhere there's a scientist deciding, and in California, it's kind of it's driven by people suing each other for everything.
I
but
mean,
but
I
basically,
do.
but the bottom line is, if there's a tiny chance of it causing cancer, then boom,
Right. Well,
right?
I was just gonna say, like, a lot of those, like in California, a lot of the rules can be appeased just by putting a big honking warning on there, like
Yep.
this. Where's my sticker that? This is gonna electrocute you, and it did. Right. Like it's in multiple
Fair
languages.
warning.
Um, I can't be mad at them for that, right? Like,
No,
so
no, I
maybe
agree.
there's a similar thing where they put a big, huge warning. This has cadmium in it. Please do not feed to babies. Um, Dangerous to people, and I'm cool with that. Like, I'm all about that. Like, not that like folks are gonna eat it, but I think it's more of like I'm more concerned with what people are like putting into the trash, right? Like that's I think the bigger issue to me
Right.
than necessarily like ah,
Well, to be fair, though, I mean, as much as I love this stuff, when I die, probably some of it's going to end up there, right? Like, I don't think we actually have control. It will end up in the trash, whether you like it or not, right? And that's the idea, um, at least in theory,
I mean,
right?
I'm definitely on the hippier side of things when it comes to this.
I studied environmental science in college, right? Like, if we
Right.
want to have that stream,
Well,
we
no,
could
like
do it.
right, like I know what people do, but I also know what I encourage and what I do in my practice because I'm afforded a luxury in that I get to choose which products I purchase and like I can make decisions that I'm like, okay, they used a little more eco-friendly building materials and stuff. Like I'll go with that. Um, I can't do that for everything, but like for
Yeah,
my
no, I do my
snowboard,
best.
like yeah, sure.
Yeah.
um, anyway, I'm yeah, all about that stuff, and I'm all about lead-free solder. It sucks to use, but crank your soldering iron a bit hotter and it works, I guess.
Yeah, it does suck though that Europe's not getting the 292, and I hope Gurr finds a solution to that because it
Yeah,
sounds stupid
yeah.
to most of us. I don't have any kids in the house. Maybe to someone with children or infants, for instance, they might actually be like, "Yeah, man, no cadmium in here, thanks."
I mean, I think it's okay. Like, I have mixed feelings on like where and when those regulations should happen, but like, I think as a module creator, like you do have to think about that when you're going to market. I do think that's part of the reason we're seeing fewer
Oh,
low
I bet
pass
that was a
gates and
surprise.
more
I,
like
I bet he
fake
got
low pass
surprised
gates.
by that, right? Like he was getting ready to ship to Europe, and Europe was like, "No, no,
Yeah,
no." He was like, "Damn it."
these are things you learn. I don't think they'll have any trouble selling them, but um, yeah,
Oh
and
no, that
they'll
batch
make
is
their way
sold.
over. They'll make their way over, right? Like there's ways to get stuff. Like I don't know how my art. Like, didn't you get some modules from Paratech? Like I don't know how those came from Russia and made it here, but they did. Um,
Yeah, I have no idea how the Paratech stuff arrives here.
and it wasn't like covert.
No, no, it went straight through the post office.
Like yeah, in a
No, no,
box
no
with like
questions asked.
Russian
I
tape
saved
all
mine
Oh
over
too.
yeah.
it. Not covert at all.
I forget somewhere in this house. It's not in this room, but there was something that I got in the box that was also Russian. It was just like a playing card or something like that. Just just a mundane Russian item, and I was just like, right on, keeping that.
Anyway, like that's probably a good question. Like for the next intro is like, who are you and what module would get you stopped by the authorities if they saw it? Like, um, just gonna write that down.
It's like one of those ones that says this machine kills fascists on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's some funny stuff.
I don't have to go right away, but I have time for like one more quick thing that's sort of on my mind. Uh, due to the some of the like controllers and keyboardy conversations earlier, like I was thinking like what like okay, if I'm gonna go play a punk rock show and I want to destroy a guitar, I'll probably get like an inexpensive guitar and smash it and glue it back together afterwards, right? Like it's a pretty durable instrument, right? Like there's a performative aspect to kicking some drums over or knocking down a speaker, but those are all like expensive, but like
You never see the keyboard player do that.
No.
right, like what's the keyboard or modular version of that? Like I can't think of a like more
So
punk rock thing to do than
actually,
like pull my
I've got
Cosmo
you.
down, but
I've got you there. In basically, the bar is already set by Keith Emerson,
yeah.
right? Like he used to just push his B3, like rock that thing back and forth, and then also famously hold chords by stabbing knives into it, right? So that's pretty metal, if you ask
Right.
me,
I mean, I've
right?
got
And
three
so I
quarter
think
inch ply
anything
on my
like that,
cases.
if you can, you know, if you had a grand piano and we're tipping it on the side, people are like, damn, look at that guy go.
Like,
Or
do
what
I
was
get a
that? Someone,
watermelon and set it on top of my Cosmo and hit it with a hammer? Like, do I pull the whole case over and explode it? Like what's the
yeah,
thing?
you need
Like,
it. That's it. You need a stunt case.
Yeah, you need something that like a system made entirely out of chips and cells.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then
chips.
when it goes over, it just boof, right? Like it's a prank.
Yeah.
It's a glitter bomb, right?
I mean, I
Falls
can think
over.
of some things, but they're never as impactful as like, the thing about the drums and the guitar I've been thinking about is like it's a whole body movement, right? Like you're like there's a whole thing happening there. Like with the synth, like I don't know, like I guess I could smash a guitar. Like that's not like they're still pretty expensive though. Like the Roland
There's,
Axe Edge is like $500 or something.
the best you can do is like stop by a Best Buy and get an M Audio or something, right? Like just the cheapest little one and be like, smash it
Yeah.
over your knee, right? Like,
I mean, pyrotechnics is another option that's pretty rad because then you can like burn other shit, like hold your cables up and melt them or something. Like
Yeah.
um, I think
maybe, oh, there you go. There you go. You get, the cloth cables and soak them in gas ahead of time, right? And then halfway through, you light your rig on fire from the cables, right? So it's like the performance is so hot.
Bar talk. I have a new request for a type of cable. We'll talk after.
But they need to be Kevlar lined, right?
Yeah,
So
something
they're
that I can
stunt.
light on
They're
fire.
like Ramstein cables, basically, right? So they can repeat the performance night after night.
That'd be pretty sick. I mean, I do know a metal worker here who does stuff like big, huge pyrotechnic lit sculptures for like festivals and
Dude,
Burning
maybe
Man
you
and
just
stuff
need
like that.
Ramstein jets on the side of it. Like one on
Yeah.
each corner, just go.
CV controlled flamethrower. There you go.
I mean, that
Ooh,
exists
you nailed
already.
it.
Like that already exists. Lick Mum did a module that does that.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, and it's as sketchy as it sounds. Like, right, you just need a gate input, right? Like, I guess it could be CV control, but I think when you're talking like valves and pressure, you probably want to keep it pretty steady.
It's on or off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and how to say, like the pyro that the fire marshal will let you use, right? has to be sane to a certain extent. So
In a lot
yes,
of venues,
valves and turn off are good.
Right. A lot of venues don't want you to burn their shit down, so they simply won't allow it.
Right.
Uh,
So
yeah.
they figured out ways though. Like the last time I've seen a couple shows that have had pyro, and I've been like, how do they do that in this building, man? Like the kind you feel heat on your face, and I think the technology of being able to have very well contained explosions is good these days, so the venues trust people, but not they're not going to trust me. They're like, no,
Maybe a
dude,
circular saw,
you're not
though.
lighting anything in here.
Right? Maybe a circular saw. Like I saw this one performer had this, like, I think it was a prop of some sort. They had a circular saw, and they would hold it up to their face, and sparks would shoot off. So I imagine it was going
Um,
against the.
so Death by Audio, someone linked
Yeah, death by
that
audio.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of his performance. Would
But
be
like somebody holding my case down and then running a circular saw through some of the cables might not be a bad way to end some shit.
well, see,
Unfortunately, you know.
you know what you can do because your case is, you can have a stunt piece of plywood on them, right? So every performance you slice it up, but then you can just take that off and put another one on, and
Yeah,
yeah,
some of the pieces are modular like that. Yeah.
and
Anyway,
you just set it to a low depth, right? And then
I imagine a circular saw going through some cables that aren't actually bolted down, like they could whip out pretty fast.
Oh yeah.
Might be sketchy, but put on some
well,
goggles
the
and test
thing to
it.
do is to figure out how to like put a piezo on a piece of wood, then circular saw that and get your modulation off of that.
I think one of the other cool things about guitars, though, is when you destroy them, like they make sound until the cable breaks off, right?
Yep,
Like,
they and it's all unique to that situation, right? Like
yeah.
they don't make those kinds of sounds.
So you need
Like
to
you
get
can
like
break two and they won't die the same, right?
you just need like a power supply that goes above 12 volts and just kind of like put more and more power through your Euro rack until it just like
Ooh,
explodes.
that would be intense.
And then send like Euro rack levels to the mixing desk and blow that up.
blow him up too. Yeah.
Has anyone made like a guitar module, like where you've got just like a really short set of guitar strings over a guitar pickup, specifically for picking up and causing feedback from a sound system?
Oh.
Sounds like it should be done, seeing as there are so many.
It wouldn't be
Like,
hard.
oh,
I
this
mean,
is a music box on a panel. This is a,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like just random modulation source
that might be another module I try to build. That one actually could be pretty fun.
with a proper pickup and.
Yeah. Anyway, let's call it. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate
That's
it.
fun.
Addict is a power starve module. That one's pretty sick, and that'd be a fun one to play with. I ended up power starving most of my Cosmo case on accident, so I'm not super into that right now. Anyway,
Low voltage got you down. Oh,
it was
sorry.
causing gremlins, and it wasn't low voltage by all specs, but when I actually measured what was being output, it was under.
Weird how that works though. Just a tiny bit under on some designs just throws them way off.
Yeah, I also learned so many things since I've dealt with some of these gremlins. Like there's the delayed start things at WMD, and I think
ADAC makes some too.
ADAC, and I think Doper maybe makes some. That would have saved me wiring up my own version of that manual. Like there's switch back here. There's a little Euro rack section in here, and I made it so that there's a little bus board attached to that plate on the back, and a switch over here to turn off some of those things are on. Yeah. The Rample wasn't super happy with the old power supply, so that's why I had to do that. Anyway, I gotta run. Should I try to play this out? I didn't have much of an intro. I just
go back to that thing you were doing. I like that.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. All right, you won't be able to hear me, but you'll hear the.
Now you're boring anyway. Put the music back on.
Let's get it.
filters all the way.
That's some thick bass.
Yeah, that's great.